be there. For those of you that don't know me, I started out ministry and experience traveling with a group known as FFH. It was a Christian radio band. Got to tour all across the U.S. With them. Got to go into hundreds of different churches, venues, arenas, and different stuff like that, doing Christian ministry, Christian concerts where we would have ministry as well. There was 67,000, I think was the actual number, 67,000 people that gave their life to Christ and signed the little cards, confirming that they had given their lives to Christ as a result of the altar calls and through that ministry. And then I felt called to go to Bible school. She went there too, actually, Jessica, and got to enrolled there in 2011, graduated, and received my ministry credentials from the Rhema Ministerial Association. And then my dad went to work, asked me to come and be the youth pastor for our church. And so a lot of what I'm going to share with you is the story of Genesis, which is the name of our young adult ministry. And we got to go, when we first went to Genesis, and now I've moved on, and Jessica and I lead the young adult outreach ministry for 3D in Tulsa, which is one of the largest young adult ministries in the nation there in Tulsa. And we get to lead the Friday night outreaches for that and be on the staff there, and I've learned a lot from serving in that ministry as well. But the Genesis started, it all happened when they had a vision. Mom and Dad had a vision. They felt like God gave them a vision that we want to start a youth ministry here in our city, in our church. And at that time, they had just taken over a church, and when they took it over, the church didn't have an active youth ministry at the time, but they felt like God had said, we want to start a youth ministry, and gave them a vision on how to do it. And at that time, we didn't have a youth facility, we didn't have a youth pastor, didn't have a whole lot of money to just throw at that part of the church, but I had a vision and had a dream. And so we started. They came to me and said, would you be willing to host a monthly event, drive in from Tulsa and host a monthly youth event here at the church? And when I first started, I didn't know anybody. I didn't live there. I didn't know anybody there. I had no idea how in the world I was going to reach out to those youth or get their attention, or what I was going to do to let them know that we were even doing anything. And it was a very overwhelming idea at first, because it's like, I don't know what do we have to work with really to reach these kids. But over time, our first service, for the first service, I only knew 4 kids that would for sure show up. The very first service, though, we had 60, and I'll explain to you kind of what we did here in a little bit. We had 60 young youth show up. About 30 of them responded to the altar call that night to rededicate or give their life to Christ. From there, we continued to grow to where we were having to remove all the chairs out of the sanctuary, have everybody sit on the floor, and we're still being cramped in the space that we had. So we actually opened up, got a brand new facility, our own youth facility downtown. Ended up moving tens of thousands of dollars worth of equipment of youth equipment, and set it up top notch. It was seriously the coolest facility, youth focused place in the city that we had there, called the Hub Internet Cafe. And it was really, really awesome to see everything that the Lord did through that. And so I want to share, I'm going to go along and kind of here in a little bit, I'm going to share you some ideas that we used to kind of make that happen, how we went from feeling like, how do we start? What do we have to work with to making this happen and getting to the point where we were? But before we do that, I want to share with you, or while I'm doing that, I want to share with you 9 principles for successful youth ministry. And just say, these are some things that I've got on my heart that I feel like it's really important for anybody who's going to get active or get involved in ministering to youth and serving people about, if you're going to be effective, then these are some things you're going to need to keep in mind. So 9 principles to effective youth ministry. Number 1 is remember that the gospel is always the most relevant you will ever be. The gospel is always the most relevant you will ever be. I feel like right now in our today's society and today's culture, like we feel like with young adults or with youth, this relevant is a buzzword. We're thinking, how can we relate to them? How can we look like them? How can we, what is going to be the most effective thing we can do that's going to make them feel like we're like we're a part of them, like we're in their culture, in their zone. And so we have all these ideas with, oh, we'll do series based off of movies, or we'll do, whatever. We try and come up with all these little ways to be relevant. But I think it's so important that if you remember, the most relevant thing that you could possibly be is when there's a person that has cancer. You walk up to that person, you lay your hand on it and say, in the name of Jesus, be healed, and that cancer falls off in your hand. That's relevant. Okay, you're not ever going to have anything more relevant than that. When you're walking in the authority and the fire and the passion and dominion of the gospel and what it has, that is going to be the most relevant thing. So I think that, I don't know if some of you, I see there are some faces that weren't here this morning, so I want to kind of recreate an analogy that I showed this morning, kind of show where I feel like the most, kind of the idea that the Western mindset has kind of fallen into with youth ministry that I think is really dangerous. So some of you that have already heard this morning, excuse me, but for those of you that didn't hear it, I explained how this morning with holiness that that a lot of people have equated the idea of holiness to legalism. And so when they hear the word holiness, they automatically think, oh, well, that holiness just means a person who is like judgmental and condemning and, angry and frustrated and lives a really strict, constricting life with no fun and no enjoyment. And so they live kind of in this legalistic, boring, lame state of being that is not what Christ meant for us. And because so many people have seen that and thought of it as being very ugly and unattractive and just something that they want nothing to do with, that they swung over here to the other side of the spectrum where they just have abandoned kind of the idea of holiness and righteous living as a whole, and where I talked about Exodus 32, how the Israelites created they melted all the gold and produced a calf and started referring to this calf as Jehovah, as the one that had brought them out of Egypt. And they didn't name a new God, they just changed the image of God to be something that was more palatable and convenient for them in the way they wanted to live. And how our society today has taken the Bible and they serve a God now that looks nothing like the Bible, and they've invented this own image of God that's like, oh, well, he's a lot more palatable and it's a lot easy for me to worship him. He lets me do whatever I want, so I'll worship this as my God. And so we had over here the legalist, and then we have over here like the hypocrite, for lack of a better word. And then in the middle, we have the people who I said that they are the ones who they just wake up, try and get to church once a week, maybe twice a week if they're really devoted, and try not to cuss. And that's like the extent of their Christianity. Like that's, if I can just get to church twice a week and not cuss, then I'm doing good. And that is like such an insult to what Christianity is. That's having a form of godliness but denying the power thereof. And unfortunately, most youth ministry in America centers around this area that I'm the center, the middle. Just get to church twice a week and try not to cuss. We teach our kids. We're just trying to inspire them. You know what? Entertain them for an hour. We have pizza. Buy them a pizza. We have a bunch of Nintendo games or whatever, and we entertain them for an hour. Have a little quick 10-minute, 15-minute Bible lesson, and send them home. And we think that that's supposed to change their life. And then once they graduate and they're on their own and they're going into the world, that they think that, everything that they had there, if all we're trying to do is entertain them for an hour, we can't compete with the world in the entertainment industry. Okay, we're not going to be able to compete with Hollywood. If we're just trying to entertain them, then we're wasting our time. We're not here to entertain them. We here to give them a good time or to be relevant in the sense of being what the world is to them. We have something that the world doesn't have. We have the power of the gospel. We have Jesus, and that's what it is our job as youth ministers and youth pastors and youth workers and mentors to give them, is to give them what they can't get in the world. And that's the power of the gospel. That's the power of Jesus. And so I want you to remember that it is not our job to entertain teens. It is our job to prepare them. The way I'm going to word it, our job is not to entertain them. Our job is to equip them and prepare them to change the world. Okay, so the first point was, remember that the gospel is the most relevant you'll ever be. So you don't need to necessarily focus on trying to, prepare your sermons around movies or whatever, if that's what you think is going to make it effective. That what's going to make it effective is having the power of the gospel and living a life like that. Number 2 is don't underestimate teens. It's very tempting for us as youth workers to buy into this whole mentality that, we're just kind of babysitting them for now until they get older. And then when they get older, now they'll be able to really step out and do great things for God. But that is not the godly mindset. If you look at the Bible, a lot of these people that we read about, right now in the Bible that we automatically, for some reason, when we're thinking about them and we're reading about them, we tend to imagine them or envision them as being, in their 40s or their 50s or 60s and very, established people. But a lot of these people we read about were teenagers. These great heroes and these characters in the Bible were teenagers. Mary was 14 years old, most scholars say, when she had Jesus. When David killed Goliath, most scholars say he was 17 years old. He was a hero to the nation. People were singing his name in the streets. And he was 17-year-old, a teenager. 11 of the 12 disciples, if I remember that study correctly, 11 of the 12 disciples were teenagers. When Christ ascended into heaven, at that time, he left the entire future of the leadership of the church in the hands of college-age ministry. And it's important that we don't underestimate these youth and think, oh, well, it's just my job. I'm just going to help kind of entertain them, while their parents are in church and growing spiritually. I'll let them play some video games and give them some pizza and then, give them a little something that they can tell their parents they did and send them home. That is just so not what we need to do. You need to believe. You need to believe in them and teach them to believe in themselves, that you right now, at this very moment, have the ability to change your world. You have the ability to impact those around you. And I always, with my teens, I was always encouraging, you can do anything you want to do. You can win your whole school to Jesus if you want to. I didn't just say, play patty cake with them and say, all right, just try and get back next. Try not to cuss, try not to have sex. Try not to go watch something bad. It's no, go and win your entire city for Jesus. Do something great. Perform a great exploit. Our youth today are so passionate and they want their lives to matter. They want their lives to count. They want to do something great. They're looking for something that they can sell their whole selves into, that they can give themselves to change the world. They want to believe that they can make a difference. And if they find something in a place that they feel accepted like they can, then they're going to give everything they have into that. And so it's important that they see us believing in them, and that they see us teaching them to believe in themselves, and that we continue to teach them that they have the ability to impact the world and perform great exploits for God. And if we're going to do that, then it means that we have to be those people ourselves. We are not going to be able to lead other people into performing great exploits for God and reaching their city for Jesus and doing all these great things if we're not ourselves doing it. There's a quote, I wish I could remember it. I don't know if I have it written down or not. I don't think I do. But the quote said that leading by example is not one method of leadership. It is the only form of leadership. Of true leadership, leading by example. And if you want to teach these kids, guys, you can go out, you can do something great. If your extent of Christianity, if the peak of your Christian experience is just trying to get to church twice a week and not cuss, well, then you're never going to be able to give them anything else beyond that. You're never going to be able to show them that there's something greater for them than that. You yourself have to start saying, I'm going to step out. I'm going to start going into my city. I'm going to start doing outreach. I'm going to start finding different mentoring programs that I can pour myself into people or multiply and replicate myself into. You have to lead them and say, look, this is how I do it. That outreach ministry that we lead on Friday nights, we go into the bars, we go to the clubs, we go to the hospitals, any place where we can find the deepest darkness, the greatest depravity, or the most pain. That's where we go to share the gospel of Jesus to and to bring the light of the gospel in the middle of their everyday lives. And let me tell you, when you're standing outside of a gay bar talking to 3 homosexual men, and they don't care about what Joyce Meyer said. They don't care about your little cute Christianese phrases. They don't care about what your pastor said. Unless your words when you're preaching have such a fire and such a weight on them that when you say them that the fire comes off and hits them and they feel it in their soul and they feel it in their chest, unless there's something real and sincere and genuine and passionate about what you're doing, then they're not going to care about what you have to say. And when you're standing on stage in front of a bunch of kids and telling them, hey, you need to go do something I'm not doing, it's not going to work. And we've got to be the first step. If you want to be a powerful youth leader, if you want to train kids to go out and change the world, then you be a world changer yourself. Get in that devotional time. Be sure that you're spending daily time with God, that you're building that relationship with Him, that you're getting in your word, that you're not telling them, oh, you need to read your Bible every day, and then you're reading it once a week. Be sure that you're doing what you're telling them to do. Okay, so I guess that was kind of 2 points in one. But don't underestimate teens, and sub point in there would be and lead by example. Third point is be yourself. And this is about being genuine. The kids today they're not interested in our religious routines. They're not interested in a bunch of masks or a bunch of putting on a show. They want something true. Like I was just saying, they want something genuine. They want something real. They're smart. They can look at us and they can tell if you're trying to, you're dressing like the teens, you're trying to talk like the teens and use the teens lingo and go to all the places. Like, it's fine if you want to hang out with them, but I'm saying, it's fine to just be yourself. You don't have to put on a show. You don't have to pretend to be something you're not. We have at Victory, we have a inner city program where there's a lot of gang members that come, a lot of young people that just got out of juvenile detention and stuff. And the guy that leads that, he's not like a thug. He doesn't walk around like, hey, yo, what's up, guy, like being a gangster. Like, he's like a middle-aged, slightly overweight, like white man, like with a comb over and like 4 kids. Like, he's totally looks nothing like what the people he's leading. But they respect him because he's real with them. He doesn't try to like put on a show or pretend to be something. He's just himself. He's like, guys, this is me. This is who I am. I love you guys. I want to be here for you. I want to make a difference in your life. And so you don't have to look like one of them to reach them. They're not looking for a best friend. They're looking for a mentor. They're looking for a pastor. They're looking for someone that will guide them and lead them, and that's what we need to be. So don't waste all your time and all your energy trying to figure out how to be one of them. Be their leader. Be someone that loves them. And if you're putting on a mask and you're like putting on a mask in the sense of either pretending to be something you're not, or even if you're trying to lead them and teach them and preach things out of your mind that aren't coming from your heart, that you aren't living yourself, if you're doing all that, then you're going to lose credibility and trust with them, and you're going to use your ability to speak into their life. If you don't keep their credibility and their trust, then they're not going to listen to you. And if you want to do that, then you've got to be leading by example, and you've got to be real, you've got to be genuine, you've got to be sincere, and you've got to take off the mask. You just got to be real. Okay, so we had one was about remember that the gospel is the most relevant you will ever be. Don't underestimate teens, which includes leading by example, and be genuine or be yourself. That was number 3. Okay, so I want us to keep going here. Number 4 is believe that everything you do can get better. It's so tempting sometimes for us to get in these ruts of just, oh, this is how we do it. This is what we do. This is just what happens. This is the way we make it happen. This is the way we make it work. But you have to understand that if you keep doing what you've always done, you always get what you've always. If you keep doing what you've always done, you always get what you've always had. If you want something new, then you've got to try something new. Ephesians chapter 3, verse 20 says, now to him who is able to do exceedingly abundantly all that we ask or think, according to the power that works in us. Exceedingly abundantly above all that we ask or think. Philippians 3:13 says, not that I have already attained or am already perfected, but I press on. That means we never get content. We don't get satisfied with where we are. We keep pushing forward. There's a story of back in the day, there was a McDonald's employee who had this idea for McDonald's to make them, that would make all this extra money. He kept coming to his bosses and to the CEO and being like, if you would let us try this one idea, if you'd let us try this one thing, then I promise we would sell so many more burgers, and we would be able to make such a huge profit off of this. And they're like, that is the most ridiculous idea I've ever heard. That's silly. We don't need to do that. I'm not going to do that. Like, that's just absurd. We're not going to waste time doing that. And finally, he kept coming to him, and he kept coming to him. So I think more out of just allowing them to say, okay, well, we're going to go ahead and get you off our back. We're going to try it with one McDonald's. We're going to try this new idea with one McDonald's. I think it's ridiculous. I don't think it's going to work, but if it'll make you happy, we'll try it with one. So they blew a hole in the wall, set up a walkie-talkie system, and invented the first drive-through window. And as you know now, McDonald's sells 63% of their income comes through the drive-through window, and all of them have it. You don't see a McDonald's without one. Because he was said, yeah, this is the way we do it right now, but there's an idea we can do it better. There's a better way to do this. And he was willing to dream and to step out there and to do something new. And so when they tried it, it worked. And it'll work for you when you do it too. There was, in our ministry, we had an idea for something I'd never heard of before with Genesis. And my sister is a professional photographer. And she felt like God put it on her heart that she wanted to reach out to the young ladies in our community to show them that they're worth, that song was out then, You're Worth More Than Gold. And she was wanting to let the girls know, you are worth more than gold, like you are so valuable. And in order to do that, she wanted to set up this professional photo shoot, take professional photos of all the girls, have professional makeup artists there, do their makeup for them, and then send them home with these photos, like these beauty photos. And at the same time have like a ladies conference where we would provide their meals for them and their food for them. We'd have the professional makeup artists there to do all for free, doing this for free. Doesn't cost them a dime, just to bless them, doing their makeup for them, pouring into their lives. And then that night we brought in a special guest speaker, a female guest speaker, from Tulsa, that she came in and spoke and just poured into the ladies again. And we had a drawing to give away a year's supply of makeup. Now, it's very out of the box. Like I'd never heard of anything like that before. A youth ministry, having a photo shoot for girls or something like that to make them, or giving away a year's supply of makeup. I've never heard of that as a gift. Like, there was a new idea in youth ministry that I had never heard of until we tried it. But I can tell you that was one of the greatest events we ever had. That went all throughout our city. That went all throughout our town. They were talking about it. Like, do you hear what Genesis is doing? Like, they're having this photo shoot for the girls, and they're giving away this makeup, and they're have professional makeup artists there to do all the makeup, and all these people are donating. We had all sorts of businesses given to that. We had the food donated to us. We had the makeup donated to us. We had the people doing the makeup donated their time and their effort, and photographer donated all of it to us. Like everything, people just, the money, people were giving money to us. Like it was a new inventive idea that was out of the box. We had never thought, it was something we'd never done before, never tried before, but we were willing to say, let's give it a shot. It's new. Like, we haven't attained it all yet. We've still got more ideas. So let's give it a shot. And it ended up being one of the greatest events we had. It was just amazing. So many girls were blessed by it. Okay, so we had 1, 2, 3, and 4. Now we are on to point 5. Be resourceful, curious, and ask questions. Be resourceful, curious, and ask questions. James 4:2 says, you have not because you ask not. Whenever it was time for us to start designing the hub, and we were getting ready to move and create everything there that we moved into there, I started asking the kids, like, what do you want to see? Like, what is cool? Like, what do you like? I wasn't just, having my say, we're going to do it this way, we're going to do it this way. Do research. Find out what's out there. Find out what the kids like. I mean, there are certain things, like you can't compromise on the message. You can't compromise on the gospel. But on things like their facility or the room they have, or where they, things that you want to provide them, like the kind of food they want there to eat, the music they want to listen to, obviously within reason. Listen and hear what it is. Where do they feel comfortable? What is it that appeals to them? And then also, you should write this down too. Turn your don'ts into questions. Turn don'ts into questions. When we were first starting this, one of the don'ts we had, Mom and Dad wanted to start a youth ministry. Their don't was, but we don't have a youth ministry. We don't have a youth pastor. So instead of saying, instead of having the don't, we don't have a youth pastor, it is, instead of we don't have the youth pastor, how can we get a youth pastor? Or how can we get someone to fill this slot? That's when they came up with the idea, well, let's have Chris come in once a month, and we'll do this outreach with him, this ministry with him. He lives in Tulsa, and he's there, and he's plugged in there, and he's happy there. We can get him there for once a month. Then after I started coming in, some more leaders kind of got raised up, and we were able to give it to one of the other guys that was able to help when I wasn't there. He was kind of leading it in my place. That was able to be more of a hands-on person there with the youth when I wasn't able to be there. But we didn't just say, oh, well, we don't have a youth pastor, so we can't do it. Or the question could be, oh, but we don't have another don't we had, but we don't have a youth facility. Well, turn that don't into a question. How can we get a facility? How can we come up with the place? So our solution was we just had it on an off night, revamped our sanctuary into a youth room, and set up all the lights and changed the atmosphere and the environment to be a youth-friendly environment, and found a way to make it happen. Or if you don't have money, well, how can you raise the money? If you don't have the people, well, how can you attract the people? That was another thing. I don't know any of the youth. I don't know how to attract youth. How do we do it? Well, I got on the phone. I started calling other youth pastors saying, hey, we're having an event. I'd like to invite your youth group, and would you guys be interested in coming and doing the drama for this night? Contact another youth group. Hey, would you like to bring your youth group and do the lead the band for us this night, and just a bunch of different things, just to get the word out, just to let people know, hey, we're here. Hey, we're here and we're doing something. Just want you to know about us, get the word out. Like, you find a way. You don't just say, well, we don't have this, so we have to give up. You say, we will find a way. I don't know how to get there, but I'm going to take the first step. I'm going to figure out how to get there. So turn your notes into questions. If the question is, we don't have the ability, how can I get the ability? Understand? See what I'm saying there? Okay, so we had point 5, be resourceful and ask questions. Number 6, learn to develop a consistent prayer life. And this is kind of a no-brainer. Like, hopefully all the other stuff we've gone over like this would already be in place. But the scripture says, call unto me, and I will answer you, and show you great and mighty hidden things which you do not know. And that's in Jeremiah 33:3. Prayer is building a relationship and receiving inspiration from the most creative person in the universe. We have the ultimate source, the connection to every question we have, every problem we have the answer just through our prayer life. And so many of us as Christians neglect that. We have this source that could answer every question we ever have, that could give us every creative idea, that could ever give us every Project Gold idea, or I'll share some other ideas with you that we did coming up and that we've tried. But the source of all those different ideas, and instead of tapping in, we just, I don't know, I can't figure it out, I don't know what to do, and we start reading magazines, and we start, doing whatever. Like, it's good to go out and look at, find resources, but don't neglect your most powerful resource, and that's prayer. You've got to develop a consistent prayer life. Unless you have a consistent prayer life, not only will you not ever be a passionate and effective youth minister or a youth leader, but you'll also never be an effective Christian as a whole. You've got to develop that consistent prayer life. Number 7, we go to inspirational places and meet visionary people. And one thing that I hate about certain parts of the body of Christ is they can be so territorial and so competitive with each other. And so instead of working together, instead of learning from someone who's got something going on that's making it, we want to fight with them. We want to say, oh, well, no, I don't, they do it that way. We're not going to do it that way. That's what they do. You see, look at all the flaws. They have this problem, this. And we start attacking and tearing down rather than taking the opportunity to learn. You can eat the hay and spit out the sticks. You can learn from people and what they're doing. And instead of getting jealous or getting competitive or getting territorial, say, wow, I love what you guys are doing. Can I learn from you? Can I train from you? Can I come and sit in on some of your services and see how you're doing this and what's working for you and what's making and how you got to this point? And so can I be trained by you? Can I learn from this? Instead of having this attitude that, well, we can't do it like anybody else. We've got to be individuals. I heard one time that the word division, if you think about it, division, strife. Division is just two vision. Die to vision. And just having more than one vision. If we could come together in unity, if all the churches could come together and start working together as one, as a whole, to get this job done, then we would be so much further along right now than what we are. So don't be scared to go to people who are more successful than you, who are doing greater things than what you are, to learn from them and to pick up from that. I'm not sure if I read the scripture or not. It was, he who walks with wise men shall be wise, but the companion of fools will be destroyed. And that's Proverbs 13:20. Again, he who walks with wise men shall be wise, but the companion of fools will be destroyed. Creativity is just learning how to steal without anybody recognizing it. Now, there's actually a book that's out right now that is called Still Like an Artist. And it's like a big, huge thing. Like people, it's a really popular thing. Still Like an Artist. And what he says, find something that inspires you. Find something that motivates you. Take it and make it your own. Take that idea and inspirational and take it up a notch. Like say, okay, this idea, I like this works, I want to use this. Now take it and say, how can I even make this better? And then use it to improve on, to use it for yourself. Still like an artist. And that's one thing that you should not be scared of or scared to do as a youth minister. Number 5 is increase your capacity for risk. I'm sorry, not number 5, number 8. Increase your capacity for risk tolerance. Increase your capacity for risk tolerance. A lot of people, you meet those people sometimes who they only want to try something if their success is guaranteed. If there's a bit of a risk involved, if it's a bit, they're not sure how it's going to turn out, they're like, let's not do that. Let's not go there. But if you're not going to do anything that takes risk, then you probably shouldn't ride in an automobile because they cause 20% of all fatal accidents. And you also, if you're not going to drive in a car, you probably also shouldn't travel by air, rail, or water because 16% of all accidents result from these activities. You shouldn't walk on the street because 15% of all accidents occur there. So you shouldn't drive, fly, or walk. But you also don't need to stay home because if you stay home, there's a 17% chance that you'll get in an accident there. Do you see my point? Like there's always risk involved. If you're ever going to do anything worth doing, there's going to be a risk involved with that. You've got to be willing to say, you know what? I might fail, I might fall flat on my face, but at least I'll know better for next time. I'll have learned a lesson. I'll know how to do this better and more effective. A failure is not a failure unless you stay there. It's just a learning curve. A failure is just a learning curve if you get up and keep going and keep moving. There are lots of times that we tried the 3D where I serve out on the leadership now. We just recently, we have our ministry. We meet on Tuesday nights. There's about 600 to 800 young adults that meet together, ages 18 to 28, to worship God together. And we decided that we wanted to get all the young adults more plugged in because it's so big that sometimes you can start to feel alone, like if you're a newcomer and you don't know people and kind of start to feel isolated. And we wanted to create an environment where everybody feels plugged in, everybody feels like that they have a home, where everybody has their own circle of friends there. So we wanted to be sure that every person coming was involved in a connect group or a cell group, and that they weren't only just coming to the main services and then not getting to be a part of more intimate fellowship with brothers and sisters. So what we decided is we're going to take the second Tuesday night of every month, and we're going to call it 3D across the city. And instead of meeting at our main facility, we're going to have cell groups or home groups set up all through across the city, and we're going to send everybody to one of those. So when it comes Tuesday night and it's time for everybody to get together and go to service, they're just going to go to somebody's home, a group of maybe 12, 15 people instead of 800, and really get to build deep, lasting relationships and friendships that they can really do life together with. So that was the goal and the idea. And we thought if we can build this community and we can build this idea and this camaraderie and this fellowship, then it'll cause our main service to skyrocket even more because those people will start bringing in more people and they'll feel like they have a family and they'll start. And we thought, this is a great idea. Man, it sounds good, right? It sounds like a great idea. Well, we tried it the first time, and the only people that came to cell groups were people that were already plugged into cell groups. We didn't have anybody new that came. Then people started not coming to the main service because they couldn't remember which night was across the city and which night was the actual service. So they said, oh, we didn't know if you were having 3D tonight, so we just stayed home. And like we just noted, it wasn't working. It was a risk. We tried it. It failed. We canceled it after the first time. It's like, okay, well, that didn't work. And we put a lot of effort into that. Like we promoted, we marketed, we put it on Instagram and had all these different kind of campaigns going to raise awareness and let people know about it. But it didn't work. It didn't work. It was a risk. It failed. But we learned from it. We got up and we moved on. We go to the next thing. With the first service with Genesis, I had no idea if that was going to work. I didn't know if anybody was going to show up. I spent a lot of time. Mom and Dad spent a lot of time. I had a band, put a band together, learned to rehearse, learned a bunch of songs. We spent a bunch of time changing all the decorations and the stage equipment. We had a new sound system installed and put in. That was a lot of work for this first service, and we didn't really know if anybody was going to show up. It was a big risk, but it paid off, and it was worth it. And it ended up being one of the most successful youth ministries there in that city because we were willing to step out and risk. And you've got to be willing to do that. I love this quote. It's by George Bernard Shaw. It says, "The reasonable man adapts himself to the world. The unreasonable man adapts the world to himself. Therefore, all progress depends on the unreasonable man." It's going to take some risk to be the unreasonable man. But it is only the unreasonable man who's going to get anything done, new. If you're going to get new, if you're going to get to a point that you've never been. Again, the reasonable man adapts himself to the world. The unreasonable man adapts the world to himself. Therefore, all progress depends on the unreasonable man. Okay, last point, point number 9. Remember, creativity becomes stupidity when it isn't producing results. Creativity becomes stupidity when it isn't producing results. One thing that I've learned so much from being a part of 3D and our leadership there is they are quick to drop something if it is not working. You know, sometimes you get in this idea, we poured into this, we put money into this, we put time and effort into this, we are going to do this thing. We are going to make it happen. And you just keep kicking it along, it's not going anywhere. Like, we're going to get up, we're going to make this work. And you keep trying to force something to work that just won't work. Don't do that. You know, give it a fair amount of time, give it a fair trial, give it a fair shot, stick with it. Don't just, you know, you don't necessarily have to expect, you know, success on the first time. It does take consistency to see things through. Consistency does bring the breakthrough. I agree with all that. But at the same time, there comes a point when you have to realize, okay, this really just isn't working. It's time to move on. It's time to try something else. And if you find yourself that you're just over and over again, just trying to force something to happen, and you just keep wasting your energy, wasting your time, wasting your efforts, then move on to something that is going to produce fruit in your life. Move on to something that is going to produce and yield a harvest for you. There's no point to keep trying. Don't let pride make you say, nope, I said I'm going to do this. I'm going to do it, by golly. And nothing's going to stop me. Like, be willing to say, okay, I tried it, it didn't work. Let's move on. Another example of that, where that happened for us, was in with 3D, was where we tried something that didn't work, was we decided we wanted to try out going to 2 services, because our first service was getting so full that we didn't really have room to fit anybody. We were having to pull in extra chairs and line them up, and it was just getting crowded, and we felt like there was more people that would have wanted to come, but once they got in there and saw how full it was, that they wouldn't want to come back. So they said, well, let's go ahead and try going to 2. We've never done that before. We've never tried that before, but let's just see how it works. And so again, went through a whole big process, getting all the plans and the schedules put together, and the band set up that could do 2 services, and the leadership, figuring out how to do have our volunteer leadership in places for both services, a whole big thing. And so we're going to try this. We're going to try it. I think now we gave it like a trial run for like 2 months or something. We're going to try these 2 services for 2 months. And if it works, then we'll keep doing it. If it doesn't work, then we'll go back to 1 service. So we just kind of announced it like kind of through the summer deal. Through this summer, we're going to be going to 2 services. So come either at 5:30 or come at 8, your choice, whatever. And we tried it, and it really ended up, because it changed the dynamic and the flow of everything. There were some people that they would come up to show to service, and their friends wouldn't be there that they thought were going to be there. And it didn't have the same effect that we thought it would. We saw it was hurting us, so we went back at the end of the time. Instead of just saying, we said we're going to do this, we're going to stick with it. We saw it wasn't really the greatest idea, it wasn't working for us, so we went back to 1 service. And there's no shame in that. There's no shame in figuring out what works and going with it, okay? Okay, so that was the 9 principles for successful youth ministry. I also want to give you 4, this is another list, 4 common mistakes that will sabotage attendance goals. 4 common mistakes that will sabotage attendance goals. And number 1 is settling for mediocrity in ministry. We have to be people of excellence. We have to be people of integrity. That means with my band, for instance, I didn't want my band just showing up. I know a lot of times it's like church, oh, we're volunteer, we don't get paid, we are, with my youth band, didn't get paid at least, and like it would be easy, like, all right, guys, I know I'm not paying you anything, I'm just expecting you to show up and do this, so, just try and get through it, whatever. But no, I sent them all links to the songs beforehand. I sent them YouTube videos with all the parts that I wanted them to play. I made sure that they had everything that they needed to be able to come show up to our practice. We had practice. We didn't just show up and play. We had a practice beforehand to say, okay, let's be sure that you've got this song sounding right and sounding the way it needs to. Before we showed up, we would show up, we'd have our practice, we'd go through that, and I made sure that everybody was on top of their game. When it came to our facility, if you saw pictures of the hub, which I should have brought that tonight to show you what we did, and Dab was really the main force behind being sure that this, but that place looked top-notch. Like, that was nicer than any of the restaurants there that we had in the area. It was nicer than any of the hangouts or the arcades or the game rooms that were there. Like, it was the nicest youth facility. And it took a lot of work and a lot of effort. And I know Dad and some of the volunteers spent hours and hours and hours and hours just making sure every little thing looked right, making sure everything was in its place, making sure everything was exactly the way it needed to be. But it was a ministry of excellence. And when people walked in there, they felt it. It's like, I remember that Disney World that like you are required, like if the employer see trash on the ground and don't pick it up, like they can get fired for that, like just for ignoring little things like that. Like when you walk into a place that operates out of excellence, like you feel it. You might not even be able to put your finger on it or know exactly what it is, but you can feel the excellence in the air. When a minister shows up to preach, you can feel whether or not he's just kind of throwing it all together and he's just kind of putting it together, or whether he's actually prepared, he's actually set himself apart and said, I take this serious, I'm going to do it. So as a youth minister, you don't just, I'm only going to have, 6 or 7 kids tonight. I'm just going to, I'll just read something when I get there. I'll come up with something when I get there. Like, you can't be like that. You've got to be a person of excellence. You've got to be sure that you take the time to prepare, to go over, to find resources that will help aid you in the information that you need to get. And so take the time out to focus on your music ministry. Take the time out to focus on your facility. Take the time out to focus on your sermons. Take the time out to focus on your kids and on your teens, and being sure that they are being cared for and being loved for and being mentored the way that they need to be. Okay, so settling for mediocrity in ministry will sabotage your attendance goals. Number 2, do not have bad visitor follow-up. Okay, it's one thing to get the youth there, to get them there for the first service, but if you can't get them back, it's not really going to do you a whole lot of good. And there have been studies shown that if you can contact someone within the first 48 hours, 3 times within the first 48 hours, it like triples the likelihood of them returning again. And so come up with 3 effective ways that you can contact that youth after they've come to service to be sure that they will return back again. One of the ways that I used was whenever we would have our services, and whenever it would be time for like during the offering, I would have all the new first-time visitors raised. And we always had a bunch of new first-time visitors. We would always have, like, at least in any given service, I would say at least like 5 or 6 new first-time visitors. And oftentimes a lot more than that. And I would have them pass out the visitor forms. On the visitor forms, that'd be a place for me to get their name, had a place for me to find out if they were on Facebook. It gave me their phone number so I could text them, and it gave me their address. And so with that information, you could take that. I would be sure I added them on Facebook, sent them a personal message, hey man, it was so great to have you. Glad you came out. It was great getting to meet you and have you be a part of the service. Hope you'll make it back next time. Then along with that, I'm on Facebook, you give them a phone call, be like, hey, just wanted to call and check on you. Have one of your other volunteers in the ministry call. Say, hey, we saw that you came out to Genesis the other night. We just wanted to call and see what you thought about it. And, do you have any recommendations or any advice for us? And you could text them if you have their phone number. You could, one of the things that I know 180 in Tulsa does is they actually have these little yard signs made up that says, thank you for coming, thank you for showing up to, I forget the 180, I think is what they used to call it. I don't know if that's what they still call it. But so whenever they would get the information from the youth, they would actually send a group of volunteers out while they were in service to go to that address and take the sign and plant it in the youth's yard. So when they got home that night, there was a sign sitting in their yard that said, thank you for coming to 180. Just made them feel special, made them feel valued, made them feel important. And like when you do stuff like that, it stands out like, oh, wow, these people took note of me. They knew I was there. They showed up to my house. And like I know people would call the church and be like, we heard about what, my kid was, so excited that you acknowledged them. So you can come up with things like that, 3 different ways that you can get them to feel valuable, feel important, feel like you took note of them. Number 3, another mistake that will sabotage your attendance goals is insufficient planning and promotion. And there's, and again, this kind of falls in, again, the mediocrity ministry. It's important that with all your events, anything that you've got coming up, and with your promotion, that you're on top of it, that you're not just kind of letting it happen to you. I could always tell there were some at that time when I was youth pastoring, Dad's ministry. I was in school full-time still for part of it. At Rhema, I was leading Pulse, the outreach ministry for Friday nights. I was on the ministry team for 3D, like the kind of the 3D staff department head, as well as the ministry team, which was like a mentoring kind of type program where we sought out certain people and mentored them. And I was doing all these different things as well as working to make a living, and I was just felt so overwhelmed at times with all this different stuff going on. Is like played on the worship team there, and that took out certain amounts of my time to have to be prepared for that and doing all that stuff. I just felt so overwhelmed that sometimes it would kind of slip through the cracks. And anytime there was a month where I didn't go through the process of emailing all the kids saying, hey, are you going to be able to make it this week? Are you blah, blah, blah? You know, we missed you. It's been a while since we've seen you. Can you come back out? Or making the phone calls, or, you know, whatever way I was promoting that week, or if I didn't like set up a promotion idea, like an idea of what I'm referring to there is 1 week, I think it was around Valentine's Day, I set up, we were teaching on, had something somehow connected to dating, and I said, whoever out of all the guys and all the girls, the guy that brings the most visitors, he's going to compete in our Battle of the Sexes game. And the girl who brings the most visitors, she's going to compete in our Battle of the Sexes game. And then those two, out of the two, they'll compete in our game, and the winner of that wins $100. So obviously before the event, I'm posting it on Facebook, creating flyers, creating ads. I'm sharing it so all of them can see it. I'm emailing kids, say, hey, you got to bring your visitors because you could win $100. Like, I'm being sure that I'm getting the word out there plenty of time in advance, that I'm not just letting it sneak up on me. And it's important that you take the time to do that and get the word out. With in 3D, one of the ideas we did was we had a panel, a date panel, which is really out there, and I know this is different, but I forget there's the name of a TV show where there would be one guy who would sit here, and then there'd be three girls who were behind a curtain, and the guy would ask questions, and each one of the ladies would have to answer his questions. Whichever one he liked most, the dating game. He would whatever girl answered, those two, he'd pick her, and she'd come out from the curtain, they'd get to go on a date together. Well, 3D had a night, let's do that for our Valentine's Day series. Like, we'll have one of the girls come up, and she'll ask questions. 1 week it'll be a girl, and we'll have three guys behind a curtain so that she can't see who they are, and she'll ask questions at the end. Remember, these are young adults. These are ages 18 to 28. So these are, they're interested in finding a spouse. And so it definitely had a lot of appeal to them. And so we had it set up, and we put it on Instagram, and we had another thing that I'll get to that in a second. Anyway, and that guy went once, and then a girl went another week, and everyone's like, oh, I got to go see what's going to happen. And we were promoting that. And another thing was we had 3D date night, where if you would take a picture of you and your partner, you and your girlfriend or boyfriend, and you would post it on the 3D Instagram page, or tag the 3D Instagram page, then they took all those names and they compiled it and used a random generator to pick date nights, and they gave away like movie tickets like every week. The people that came that would do this on Instagram, they'd give away movie passes, and then give away, and they would get those donated. They'd call and say, hey, we're with 3D, we're doing this. Is there anything you could donate if we, promote your business, blah, blah, blah. We got all that stuff for free, and they would give all this to us, and it didn't cost us a dime, and we were able to not only get people excited about coming because, hey, I might win free movie passes and free dinner and free all this, but also they're blowing it up on social media and Instagram. It's everywhere. Everybody's tagging. Everybody's like, what is 3D date night? What is that? And everybody's talking about it and trying to figure it out. So plans like that, think through what are ideas that you can use to get people to come, to get people talking, to get them to show up, instead of just, oh, we're just going to have service. We'll see who comes. Like, you've got to get it out there. You've got to work it. You've got to come up with creative ideas to say, what can I do that's going to make people talk about this? What incentive can I give them to convince them to want to show up? Okay, so we had said 4 common mistakes that sabotage attendance goal. 1 was settling for mediocrity in ministry. 2 was having bad visitor follow-up. 3 was insufficient planning and promotion. And number 4 is you have to create realistic goals. And it's so disheartening to your leadership team and so disappointing to your congregation when you set this crazy goal that is ridiculous and then you don't meet it. And it's like, oh, well, we didn't meet it. Now, sometimes you have to. Sometimes you have to create risk. You have to go out there. You have to try it. But create a realistic goal. Something that not easy, not something that doesn't require risk, but something that is achievable, something that is doable, so that when you achieve it, you can celebrate. And you can be like, look what we did, look what we accomplished. And it raises the morale of everybody so much when you have those moments, when you set a goal, you aim for something, and you hit the target. It is such a motivating and such an exciting experience for everybody involved in that. So be sure that as you're creating realistic goals, like if you're like running 30 youth, don't say, okay, we're going to have 1,000 in 6 months. That might not be the most realistic idea, but let's say, let's try and double our attendance in the next 2 months. and then start implementing all these ideas of these events and these goals and these planning and this promotion and all this other stuff that you're wanting to try. And then when you get there, when you hit that goal, celebrate, have a party, say, look what we did. Make it special, make it a big deal, make it a special event. So those are just some practical things, some ideas that from my time in ministry that I've experienced that have really made a big deal. And I really hope that blessed you and experienced something that you could use. With the last few minutes that we have left, we've got 7 minutes left. Is there any questions that anybody has or anything that they would like to know or curious about how we did what we did or anything like that? Speak now or forever hold your peace. Okay, well, I guess we're good then.
We might just add something when we did the hub there.
Ending that night, that end night. Oh, it's over, like that.
I don't know if it's already on or.
We might just add of what Christopher was talking about when we moved into the new facility, the hub there in Clinton, is when we started when we started the initial youth ministry the first night that Chris was talking about, we had no money. I mean we didn't have any money budgeted for any of that. People were asking me, how are you doing this? Where are you getting the money? I honestly didn't have an answer. I just said, we're just doing it. I don't know. They said, well, where are you getting the money at? I said, we're just doing it. Because I didn't have an answer. I didn't know where the money was coming from. I just knew that we would have to do it. And we had other churches. We had one other church donate to us, what was it, $500 early on. And we just started doing it. And then like Chris said, we would change our main sanctuary and make it look youthy until we could move into our own place and start and leave it that way and decorate it and set it up. But it's not an exaggeration what Chris is telling you. We didn't know any kids. We had only been pastoring there about 2 months when we started, and we didn't know any kids. We didn't have any money. We had one family with 3 teenagers in our church at the time. That was all we had. And but just through taking it on, and Jackie had the initiative. Jackie came to me, and at first I thought, I don't know. She wanted to have something for New Year's. This was like we started pastoring in November, and she wanted to have a big youth night for New Year's Eve. And that was only like 4 weeks away. I said, can we even? She said, I'll do the leg work. I'll make the phone calls if you'll agree to it. And I said, okay, let's do it. And from there, that was the beginning. Jackie had heard from the Lord and had an idea. And from there, it just expanded and grew, and the Lord blessed it. We called the first night Fire on the Mountain.
Yeah, I remember that.
And we started at, 8 o'clock and went till midnight and gave away pizza and didn't have any kind of spectacular facility or anything. We just redecorated our main facility, our main auditorium. But from there it grew, and we just saw God do. We saw God do phenomenal things. We had kids come in off the streets. We had people that were homeless come through there. We had people that were in druggies, and trouble, gangs. I mean, you name it. We had people come through there that we were ministering to, and it really was a phenomenal thing that we did. And Chris really deserves the credit because he oversaw it and led it and kept everything, like he said. And we saw that grow from zero to being the prominent youth ministry in the city. And we had great results. And even we had other pastors coming to the church to tour our youth group.
Yeah. All the biggest churches in that area came to tour our facility because they wanted to see
what we were doing. And so God was good.
Got to meet the mayor, got to meet the
mayor was there.
The judge.
Judge was there. The county judge came through. Some bankers came through. We had a grand opening with the Chamber of Commerce doing a ribbon cutting. And God just blessed it. We did some wonderful things. But let me just add this before I close because this is relevant. You might say, well, if God did such wonderful things, why aren't you still there? That's a very good question. And I have a very good answer for that. while we were working feverishly and building a youth ministry, the main congregation in the church did not have a vision for what we were doing there and basically would not support it. Some of them wouldn't even come. Some of them never came through. Some of them never gave an offering toward it. I mean, it was just, I was blown away. I thought, how can a church of believers, adult believers, and we had a tiny congregation to start with there in our Sunday services, but they were so uninterested in what God was doing in the youth that it just really, in the end, we starved out because we couldn't keep the momentum going in the main church because it was funding so much of the youth ministry. Although a lot of it we was getting outside donations and outside offerings, but the main church was the source that was paying the rent and paying me and paying utilities and things like that, and they just didn't care about supporting it. So that's why we're not there anymore, is because we just said, if this isn't any more important to y'all than this, then, I need to be somewhere else. I need to give our ministry to some place that appreciates what we're trying to do. And we were there 2 years. We spent 2 years in this city and doing it, and ultimately it was a great blessing what God did there.
Miracle after miracle. It was really every step of the way, everything that we set out to do, there was no way in the physical to make it happen. I remember one time I felt like, okay, well, let's, one of my marketing ideas that I'd come up with, I forget now exactly how it works, but I remember that I was having, I think every week, like one week we're going to doing laser tag, the next week we're going to go bowling, the next week we're going to do something else. But the problem with that is we didn't have a van. We didn't have a youth van for the youth. It was like, the thought is, well, we're going to make it this is an event that the youth need to do. So instead of, I turned my don't into a question. Instead of, well, we don't have a ministry van, so we can't do this, as, how can I get a ministry van for this? So I contacted one of the other ministers that had brought his ministry to come part of our events sometimes. I said, hey, a Baptist church, not even the same denomination as us, said, hey, would you be willing to let our group go with yours if we used your van to go do some of these events that we're wanting to do? He said, yeah, absolutely. We'll come to your church. We'll pick everybody up and we'll take it. And so we came up with things like that. It's instead of just saying we don't have it so we can't make it happen, it's like we'll find a way to make it happen. And so we would look and we'd find and we'd get creative. And in this situation, it was letting another church let us use their van, and they were okay with it. And sometimes you have not because you ask not. Just you automatically, they're a Baptist church. They're not going to let us use their stuff. They're not, they wouldn't do that. They don't like us. We speak in tongues, like they're going to be scared of us, or whatever. But they did. They came and we got to get to know them, and they started coming to our events regularly, and were a huge blessing to us in a lot of ways. Because you've just got to turn your don't into a question and say, I don't have a way, don't have an answer, but there is a way. And when you have that attitude, you'll always find a way.
And that $500 offering that was donated to the youth ministry was from a Baptist church.
Yeah, and there's at times I would look out at times at service, and we would have Church of Christ, Baptist, I don't remember all, Foursquare, like all sorts of different denominations, Assembly of God, like all right there in our service wanting to be a part. They were so excited about what was going on that they were showing up. They wanted to be a part of it too. So